So hello everyone, my name is Shreyas Singh and I'm a second year computer science student at VIT Vellore. In this video, I'll be talking about the different resources that you could use for data structures and algorithms. At VIT, you'll be taking this course as a 4-credit course. It will have a lab component, a theory component, as well as a project component. Now, in this video, I'll be taking you through some amazing textbooks that you could use, some wonderful websites, as well as some amazing YouTube playlists that you could use and refer in order to do well in this course. I hope that you all pay a lot of attention to this particular course because this course teaches you a lot about what computer science is and is also very imperative for any kind of interviews that you might have in future. So I hope I can be of some assistance to you with the help of this video, and I think we should begin now. Alright guys, so let's start by taking a quick look at what this course is all about. So the course name is Data Structures and Algorithms, and this is a 4-credit course that you would have to take up at VIT. So you have a project component in this, you have a lab component in this, and you obviously have the theory component in this. Now this is one of the most important courses that you could take up in your college life, right, at VIT as a computer science student. Now the reason why it's so important is obviously there's the academic purpose, right? So if you don't do well in a 4-credit course, that would obviously impact your grade point a lot. But that's not really the main reason. The thing is that this course, this course forms the core, the crux of software engineering and different fields of computer science, right? So for example, in one of my previous internships that I had, I was working on the back end of a website, right? And it was so important that you really understood all the data structures in order to make sure that you can arrange information and the knowledge that you receive from the user in an efficient enough manner where the site works in a very smooth manner, right? Without lagging, there's no delay. It's a robust site that you have. And besides the need to understand it from a purely computer science student perspective, the another need that you have is that this course forms the crux of a lot of the interviews that you would have, right? So whether it be any kind of internship that you might apply for, any kind of job application that you have, a lot of these interviews ask you about this course, right? They ask you questions from this course. Now those questions could be really basic or really advanced question depending on the company that you are applying at, right? Now some people like to take it a step beyond this, and they like to delve into competitive coding, which is another really fun aspect of this. But in order to start with competitive coding, you have to have an understanding of this course first, right? Alright, so now let's take a look at what this course is. This course has basically got 7 modules, and the first 2 modules basically are just a gentle introduction to what the overall course is going to be like. So it starts with explaining you basic terms like what time complexity is all about, what space complexity is about, right? And then it goes into a bit more of analysis of the algorithms. So you would have to understand different recursive algorithms and master theorem. Like again, these are just different introductory tools that you would need in order to better understand the course, right? And then in module 3 you begin by understanding basic data structures, right? So stacks, queues, linked lists, trees, all of that is covered in module 3. And then in module 4 you start by understanding what basic algorithms are, right? Brute force, greedy, and you need to be really familiar with all of this stuff, right? And then in module 5 you move on to graph algorithms. Now I understand that you might not understand what graphs are, but that's all right. This is just a very introductory thing, right? So this, and in module 5 we move on to the graph algorithms. Now graph is another kind of data structure that you would be studying about, and basically in this module we delve deeper into how we could essentially traverse the graph. And then in module 6, the module 6 is actually quite a difficult module, so I would ask you to pay a lot of attention when you were going through this module. So this basically it involves solving and approaching very difficult problems, right? So how do you approach those questions, right? Like if you have some there are certain category of questions, right, that are not really easy to approach, and there is a very specific way in which you approach them, and that's what's covered in module 6. Now, when you come to module 7, this is a very small module where all you'll be going over is just how search engine works and what are the algorithms that you use for that. All right, now moving on, if you would like a very quick introduction to this whole thing, I would recommend you to go through this particular video, right? I'm sure that there will be a link to this video in the description. Now, what this video is about is it's a 15 minutes long video on basic data structures and algorithms. It's a very quick introduction to what this course is about. So this guy basically takes you over what data structures are and what different algorithms are, and he explains this to you in brief, and I think it's a good introduction. It's just 15 minutes long. Now, moving on to the next point that I would like to talk to you about is that what are the prerequisites to this course, right? So the prerequisites to this course is that you need to be very familiar with at least one programming language. Now, it could be any language, but I would highly recommend that this language be C or C++, because in any of the labs that you attend for data structures and algorithms, most of the assignments that would be given to you would be in C, C++. Plus, I personally feel that if you understand data structures and algorithms in C, C++, it helps you really understand what's going under the hood. Right now, one more thing that's really important before you start with this course is having a thorough understanding of what pointers are, right? So in short, pointers are basically a way for us to manipulate memory, right, and access memory. And that's the most basic way in which I could explain it. But if you are struggling with pointers, this is one of the resources which I personally liked. Now, I didn't find it on time, so I struggled a bit with pointers initially. And I watched bits and pieces of this playlist, and this is like a really well-made playlist. It's by a YouTube channel called My Code School, and this guy has an entire playlist on pointers, which covers absolutely everything that you might possibly need for like data structures and algorithms. Now, let's talk about what you would need besides this, right? So now you understand what the prerequisites are, and let's just say that you are thorough with the prerequisites, so you understand C, C++, or at least some other language, and you are familiar with what object-oriented programming principles are, and you're just familiar with basic data structures like arrays, right? So if you're using, for example, Python, you should be familiar with, say, lists and dictionaries and tuples. And once you have that point, I think you are really ready to delve deep into the subject and actually begin with the subject. So let's talk about the resources that you would need. My very first suggestion would be to get a really good teacher, right? So if you are lucky enough to get one of the more popular teachers for data structures and algorithms for your classes, that would be a huge help, because these teachers would give you like extremely good notes, and they have a specific way of teaching the subject, right? For example, my teacher was Shalini L, who is a very famous teacher when it comes to data structures and algorithms, and her classes were really good, right? So you could sit in a class and you would know that this woman has put in a lot of time and efforts into preparing her lectures, right? And she was always ready to help you with any kind of doubts. Now, keep in mind that when you take up a teacher who's good at teaching, that teacher is putting in a lot of effort, and they sort of have an expectation that the students would also be putting the same kind of effort. So if you take up, for example, my teacher, who was Shalini L, the thing you would have to be a bit careful about would be the class would be competitive, right? A lot of students would actually put in that effort, so you cannot slack in this class. Now, for example, when we were doing the projects, right? So she was very against general projects that you could find on internet very easily, and she wanted a twist to her projects, the projects that you did. So for example, my project was I had to basically combine two different algorithms to make sort of a new algorithm, right? So I decided to take up bidirectional Dijkstra's, which is one of the algorithms that you would cover in this course, as well as A star algorithm, and I tried combining them both. And that was my project. I worked alone on this project and I learned a lot, right? So that's one of the benefits of taking up a strict teacher who's really good at a subject. So you learn a lot, right? And the grade doesn't really matter. I mean, overall, yes, it is a 4 credit course, right? So it does matter. But long term, when you think about it, it doesn't really matter if you get a B or maybe even a C. But if you put in decent efforts into this course, even with a strict teacher, you could do pretty good. What you just need to keep in mind is that it should be a priority that you are really familiar and thorough with all the. So what really matters in this course is not the grade that you score. On some level it does, but long term, when you think about it, the grade doesn't really matter that much. What does matter is that you are really thorough with the fundamentals of this course. So that is one of the benefits of taking up a strict teacher. You do learn a lot. Now, let's begin with the actual resources that you could use to learn about data structures and algorithms. Now, if you would like to understand about data structures, again, it's this playlist from the same person, My Code School. Now, I haven't gone through the entire playlist, but I have gone through bits and pieces, certain topics with which I was struggling with, and the videos are really well done. Right? So the videos start with introducing you to the basic data structures, giving you a bit of intuition about what the data structures are about, and then the person moves on to a basic implementation of the data structures, right? Both of these things are very important. So you need to understand how theoretically the data structures work, as well as how you could potentially implement them. Now, the video is again by the same YouTube channel. It's My Code School. And now let's move on to the next section of this course, which is algorithms. Now, I didn't find any better playlist than this guy's playlist. The guy's name is Abdul Bari, and he has made an entire playlist on algorithms, right? And the videos are really well done. So I have actually gone through this entire playlist, or pretty much the entire playlist. Now, the playlist began by taking you over the basic stuff like frequency count method, time complexities, Master's theorem, things like that, right? And then he goes into all of those complicated algorithms that you might need to know, like how does Dijkstra work, how does BFS, DFS, all of that is covered in this. Now, keep in mind that this playlist, it's mostly theoretical playlist, so there isn't much of implementation. Like, he does talk about pseudocodes and bits and pieces throughout the video, but this playlist doesn't really dwell very deep into the implementation section of this. Now, let's just say that you would like to have a bit more clarity on certain algorithms, right? For that, I would highly recommend the next resource, which is MIT Open Coursework, right? So the videos are extremely long, right? So they are almost an hour long, and there are 47 videos in this playlist. But every video that you have in this playlist has been like perfected, right? So every little detail that you could possibly want to know about any kind of algorithm or data structure would be covered in this playlist, right? So absolutely every little detail, right? And the guy who takes this course is extremely knowledgeable. Obviously you can understand this is from MIT, so the course quality is exceptional and you can use it. I would not recommend you to use this as your primary source, because usually you would not have the kind of time that's needed to go through this entire playlist. If you can, that would be wonderful. But if you don't have that kind of time commitment, then you can definitely go through Abdul Bari's list. And this is like an exceptional playlist too. Now, let's just say that you're not, you're more of like a textbook guy and not really much of a video person. For that, the standard book that's recommended is CLRS, right? So the book's name is Introduction to Algorithms. It's also known as CLRS, which is basically the abbreviation of the first names of the authors who wrote it. Now, again, like I have gone through bits and pieces of this book, and the topics done in this book, they are covered in great detail, and it's like really well put. So you can use this as a reference. Like, you could use this as your primary reference if you enjoy reading textbooks, or you could use it as your secondary reference. Now, let's just say that you're nearing the exam, right? So what do you do in that condition? So like, you would need like some sort of quick revision material, right? So this is another resource that you can use for that. The site is called CodesDo, and I don't know why a lot of people are not using this, but this, I personally have used this, and I have like gone through almost every single article that they have on data structures as well as algorithms, and the stuff is really good, right? So this could be your quick revision, or this could be maybe a piece that you could read before the classes start, right? So if, for example, tomorrow binary trees are going to be covered, then you can certainly get a quick read using this. Like, it will not take you much time, and it covers all the basic information that you might need, right? So you can use this as either a quick intro or a quick revision. And it also has the implementation, right? And it has the implementation in 3 languages: C, Python, as well as Java, right? So it's again like a really good resource that you can have a look at. So they are basically, the website offers you courses on Python, C, Java, C++, Ruby, Perl, as well as algorithms and data structures. Now, I have gone through Python, I've gone through Java, I have gone through the data structures and algorithms. All of the work done in this is actually quite good, and I can't really recommend this more. And I think it's a wonderful resource that you can definitely take a look at. Now, so far we have discussed about the theoretical aspects of it, right? Now, let's just try and look at the question parts of it, right? So like, where do you solve the questions from? So this right here is one of my favorite resources for working on question. So this is a YouTube channel by, the YouTube channel is known as Love Bubber, and he has basically made up a list of 450 questions on data structures and algorithms. Now, I have actually gone through quite a bit of this list, and just a quick introduction about this guy. So this guy actually works at Amazon, and he has spent actually quite a bit of time working on these particular question set. And the questions are really, they are really well made, you know, like they are not in a random order, and the questions are really useful too, you know, like each question would help you understand a concept that you might not be that familiar with. So you can definitely use it as a resource while you're going through the course. Now, this essentially would be more than enough for anything that VIT could possibly ask you, and this would also give you a very good fundamental understanding of what the course is about. But the thing is that you also need this course for interview purposes, right? So for interview, you could take it a step further. Now, this is the first resource for that, Geeks for Geeks. Now, keep in mind that a lot of the questions over here would be covered in the 450 questions that you would have done in the playlist, in the Excel sheet that I just showed you. A lot of the questions would have been covered already, but you can use this as a reference, right? And the second resource that you have is LeetCode. Now, LeetCode is actually one of the most recommended resource when it comes to any kind of interview preparation. I personally have not started with LeetCode yet, but I am about to, and it comes highly recommended from almost everyone. So the way LeetCode works essentially is that you have difficulties, right? Questions of different difficulties. So the difficulty section basically lists out whether the question is easy or hard or medium, right? So in general, you are expected to be at least be familiar with all the easy questions. You should be able to solve all the easy questions, but it's a good practice to be also very comfortable with the medium ones, right? Now, if time allows, you can definitely try out the hard ones, but usually in interviews, they don't, as far as I have heard, I have a lot of friends in third year, so usually being comfortable with easy or medium does the thing. Now the question comes that, like, there are a lot of questions on this website, like there are thousands and thousands of questions. So are we expected to solve all of those questions? The answer is no. Obviously you don't have the time to go through each and every one of the questions. So what do you do? Well, here here's the like a list, a curated question list, which has top 75 questions. Now I would not recommend you delve. Obviously nobody has the time to go through thousands of questions. So this right here is a curated list of top 75 questions, right? These are all questions on lead code, which were sort of crowdsourced by a bunch of different people. So they basically went through these questions and found them to be the most effective ones, and they made up this list. You'll also find a similar list which has about 100 questions. So you could just go through either of these lists. And the thing to keep in mind is that you don't really start with these questions right away. What you do start with is having a proper understanding of all the theoretical things, being thorough with basic questions. So if you have gone through the 450 questions that I previously showed you, then you can definitely jump into this. You would find a lot of questions are overlapping, and that's a good thing. That shows that you have covered a lot of stuff, and that this is about it. This is pretty much all you would need to have a good interview performance. But now let's just say that you would like to go a bit more into data structures and algorithms, right? So maybe you enjoy the subject. So what's next? So you have a thorough understanding now. What could you possibly do? Well, now you could delve into something known as competitive programming, right? So I personally am not into competitive programming. I tried it out, but it's just not my thing. But if you do like that sort of thing, there are lots and lots of resources and lots of websites that you could possibly use. So there is Top Coder, the website that you see in front of you. There is Hacker Rank, Hacker Earth, and one of the things that I would like to mention is that this website, Hacker Rank, I would definitely ask you to at least try this out, because there are lots of companies which actually give you coding interviews in a very similar pattern, right? So they actually hold coding interviews on this particular website. So it's a good idea to be familiar with how the website works. Now this over here is actually a pretty fun website that I discovered pretty recently, and you can actually use it. So it's more of designed in a form of a game where you could sort of level up, and this is an interesting approach on practicing data structures and algorithms. And let's just say that this is not your thing. So you like to stick with textbooks. You don't like using websites. So what could you possibly do? Well, here's another resource that you could possibly use. So cracking the coding interview. So this book is in Java, right? It's not in C, it's not in Python, it's only and exclusively in Java. Now this is one of the most recommended books when it comes to any kind of interview prep. And it covers a lot of things besides just data structures and algorithms. It also covers things like if you have received an offer, how do you negotiate that offer? Like almost everything that you might need, from say basic data structures like strings all the way to how do you maintain your calm and peace during an interview, how not to stress during an interview. And this is actually pretty good resources, and I'm actually using this on my own too. Now the next resource that I might suggest is Elements of Programming Interviews. Now this book actually comes, the one that you see in front of you, it's in Python, but this is also available in Java and C++, I think. So you can also take a look at this book. Now I found this book to be a quite difficult one. It's not really, I would say that it's a step above the coding, the previous book that I showed you, this right here. It's slightly more challenging, but it does have some good questions, and I have tried bits and pieces of it. I haven't finished the book, or I'm nowhere near finishing the book, but this does have some good questions that you could definitely try out. And with that, I would like to conclude this, and So I think we covered pretty much everything that you would need to know, and also feel free to send in your questions or any kind of doubts that you might have, and I'll try my best to help you out with all of those. Thank you.